Guys, I hope you're having a really good day. So today we're going to move on in our notes. I've been giving you some time to work on your project, so you should still be working on that. Remember, it is due Friday, and it will be a major grade. Don't forget to do your attendance check-in. And then today we want to talk about domain and range. You have an activity, an assignment after your notes for today, and it's going to be a Desmos activity, so you need to complete that. I'll put that in the grade book. And then remember, up at the top of Unit 8, here's where you're getting your journal notes from. You can be writing these on notebook paper, or you can, if you have a printer, you can print them out at home, and you can write on that way. Or if you're filling them out in the Google slide, that's fine. You may just have to take a picture of your work and then upload the picture. So domain and range. We have talked about domain and range of quadratics and linears, and we've looked at other functions too, exponentials, which we'll talk about in Unit 9. So this really is more of a review. So what do we need to know about domain and range? Well, first of all, we need to remember that domain, whoops, let me change my thing here. Get a different color. Make it a little bit wider. Okay. So domain is your x values, your possible x values. Range is your possible y values. And remember, you can think of domain as left to right. How far does your graph go left to right? And then you can think of range, your y values, as bottom to top. That's kind of a review of that's basically what domain and range is. It's your possible values. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. So if we're going to find our domains, remember that's x. Domains are x values. So if it's a continuous function, like this one is, because I could trace it with my pencil. I could put my pencil down and never pick it up and trace the whole function. So that means that it is a continuous function. We use inequality symbols to represent our domain and range because we're going to have a range of values. So because we're talking about domain, x's, we put x in the middle of our inequality symbols. So domain is left to right. So remember, we would draw in these little like boundaries and say, well, how far does my picture go left to right? Well, I'm looking over here. I'm going to zoom in now. And it looks like my picture stops right here at this point on the x-axis. And so that's -4. And then I think we're counting by 2's here. So let's be careful so I can see that we've got 1, -2, -3, -4, -5. This looks like a 5, but I think that's really -6. So it goes all the way from -5. And then I want my value on the right. And it goes all the way here, and I can see it's cutting straight through right here. And that's 2. Now I have to go back and say, well, do I need lines under my symbols? Okay, well, over here, at the -5, that's an open circle. So remember, you don't put lines under your symbol if it's open circle. However, this one is a closed circle, so it does need a line over here at 2. Okay, so now let's find our, whoops, didn't mean to erase that. Let's find our range, which is our y values. So because we're talking about y, we do our symbols this way. And we always put our smallest value first and then the largest one. And if you do that, your symbols always point the same direction. Okay, so for y, we need to go from the bottom. How far down does my picture go? And how far up does it go? Well, the lowest point I'm seeing here, well, if this is 2, this must be 1, right? Because this is the origin here. I know my graph's getting pretty messy, but I go up 1, and that's where the bottom of my graph is. That's the minimum value, right? So it is going from 1 all the way up here to the tip top, which looks to me like it's hitting at, this is 12, 14, 16, and this is 18, so right in between it must be 17. Now again, I'm going to look down at the bottom of my graph and at the top up here. And I want to say, okay, up here I have a closed circle at the 17, so I need a line under it. And then down here at the bottom, I don't have any holes in my graph there, so I need a line under that one too. Okay, so let's look at another one here. It's got an example too. I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit. So the same thing, domain is X. So we're going to do we would do our inequality symbols, and we're trying to figure out how far does this picture go left to right. So if I come over here and I start trying to box this guy in, wait, I noticed something here on the end. What is on the end of my graph? On both ends. So if I try to box this thing in, it doesn't matter because this is arrows. And these arrows are telling me that this guy is going to bust through those boundaries and it's going to keep going. And notice how it is going left to right. It's growing out left to right. So when that happens, when you can't box it in left to right, we call it all real numbers. That's our domain. All real numbers. Okay, so I'm going to erase a little bit so we can see where I made a mess here. Let's do our range. So range is y values. That's what we're looking for here. So I notice bottom to top, it sits right here. And then, but notice if I try to box it in up top, that's not going to work. These arrows mean it's going to bust through. So I do have a smallest value at the bottom, and it's sitting right here at the origin. So it's at the y value of 0. Then I do my symbol, and I do my y. And normally I would do another symbol and a number over here. But because I don't have a topmost value, I don't put a number over there. And so now I just need to look at the bottom and go, well, do I have any holes in my graph down here? No. It's the bell, so another one's going to ring in a few minutes. So that's our range. All the values that are greater than or equal to 0. Okay, well, what if you've been given a table? How do you find your domain and range from the table of values? Well, I can't just look at the table and name off my x and y values because this is telling me it's a quadratic function. It's not just this table of values. So this is where the calculator comes in handy. Remember what we learned? That we can go to Stat, hit Enter for Edit, and we can enter our x values in list 1, y values in list 2, and it would give us the equation. And that's nice because if I have an equation, well, then I can put it in Desmos, and Desmos will give me a graph. And domain and range is always easier if you have a graph. So I'm putting in my values here, 0 and 3. And as we always put the x in list 1 and the y values in list 2. And I go back to Stat, I go over to Calculate. And so because this is a quadratic function, I have to do 5 quad reg now. And I go down to Calculate, hit Enter. And here is my equation. Y is equal to 1x squared plus 0x. Okay, so I don't even have to write the middle term, the bx term, because b is 0. And then c is minus 1. So I have x squared and minus 1. So my equation is y equals 1x squared minus 1. So I'm going to type that in Desmos. So if you can't remember where Desmos is, it's linked in my Canvas course here. And you can click Open in a new tab. So y equals x squared minus 1. Okay, so here is my picture. Now, Desmos does not give you arrows, but notice if you drag, this picture is not stopping. It's going to keep going. But I notice down here, my graph doesn't go any further than this point right here. So let me pull this up and bring it over here. So looking at my, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Looking at my graph here, I want to find the domain and range. And you can sketch a picture on that graph if you want to, but we have the picture right here in Desmos. So I notice for my domain, notice how this quadratic here is getting wider and wider. If you're dragging up, notice how it keeps getting wider and wider and wider. So it is getting wider, and because we can't box it in left to right, that's where we say for our x values, all real numbers. And most of the time with quadratics, that is your domain, all real numbers, unless it's one that's been chopped off that has circles and endpoints on the end. I don't know why my iPad is freezing and not finished writing. I did write the S, but it doesn't seem to, there it goes. Now I refresh. Okay, so if I click over here in Desmos, I can see that my bottommost point, my Y value, remember I want the Y value, so I don't care about the 0 here. I'm looking at range, which is Y values. So range is Y. So it goes down to -1. So then I would do my little symbols here. And I don't see any holes in my graph down here. So I would put a line under that symbol. But I don't have a number to write over here on this side because it keeps going up forever. So that is my range. All the numbers that are greater than or equal to -1. That's my Y values. Okay, so this next one, they gave us an equation in example 4. So you type that one into Desmos and see what you come up with. Let me see if I can get this to there we go. Okay, I want a large screen here. Okay, so let's look at number 5 then. What do we do if they just give us a description? They didn't give me a table of values, so I can't find an equation. They didn't give me the picture, but they gave me a description. And I have a blank graph here. Well, I could sketch this graph. So this function has a maximum, it says, at 2, -3. So I know the point. I'm going to zoom in because this is a really, really small graph. So I know the point 2, -3 is important. So if I go over here to 2, and then I go down 1, 2, 3, that's this point right here. Okay, so that point is important. And not only that, it tells me that this function has a maximum, which means it's the highest point. So I know my thing, it must be doing something like this, curving down from there, because it doesn't go any higher than that. So, well, if I look at that, well, that helps me with my domain and range then, because now I know my domain. Remember, it keeps going out forever and ever, left and right. So my domain is all real numbers for my x. I'm going to abbreviate this, numbers. And then the range, well, then I know that my bottom number, so normally, remember we write our Y and our symbols. Well, do I have a number down here? Could I box this guy in down here? No, so I don't have a number on this side, but I do have a number that I could box it in up here because I know it does not go any higher than -3. So for this one, I don't need this side. So my range is going to be all the numbers smaller than -3 because it said -3 is the maximum number. So you can do the same thing with the next one. You could sketch your graph here, but this one has a minimum at 1, 2. Again, my thing froze. So if I sketch the point 1, it's really hard to see, I know. 1, 2, there's that point. Well, they told me that was the minimum, so I know it must be opening up somehow from here. Now, this is not exact. Okay, well then again, what is your domain going to be, guys? Remember, it's left and right. It's getting wider and wider forever. So it has to be all real numbers for your domain. And then your range, your Y values, well, let's try to box it in. It does not go any further down than 2. And I would do my symbols. And I don't have a tip-top number here because this guy is going to bust through. So I don't have a number to write over here. So I just end up erasing this part. I'm not writing it all. And then I look down here. I don't have any holes in my graph, so I need a line underneath that one. Okay, so that's a review of domain and range. You try number 4 on your own. And then head on over to that Desmos activity that I posted on Canvas and see if you can work on some of those. It kind of is exploring some graphs and seeing what you can notice about the domain and range.